Today, we are going to be ranking the 4 Final Fantasy Magic the Gathering Precons from worst to best.
I'm Mia, and I'll be cosplaying at MagicCon Vegas.
I'm BZ. I'll be cosplaying at MagicCon Vegas, but you can't see it yet until Vegas. We're the Nitpicking Nerds, sponsored by Card Kingdom. If you want to buy Magic the Gathering Final Fantasy, if you want to get the Precons, go pre-order them right now at Card Kingdom. And if you spend $50 or more, you actually get free shipping. And it comes with the stress-free relief of knowing that all of your stuff's going to arrive safely, on time, and in one package.
They have pre-orders for singles, precons, sealed stuff, all of the things that you can need for Magic. Go to Card Kingdom, use our link, tell them we sent you. We appreciate it so much. We're also sponsored by Dragon Shield, best sleeves in the multiverse.
Good sleeves.
If you want to use the code
Nerds
at checkout, you can save 5% of your room tax dollars on your entire order, which includes picking up 4 dual mat sleeves for each of these decks, because if you want to get all 4, you should only sleeve them in Dragon Shield.
Absolutely. Everything else is a waste of your money. Next, Moxfield. Sponsor? Not yet. They'll be later, and you'll be excited. And we have Patreon. If you want to see extra nerds, including $5 deck techs that I don't have on the main channel, that's the place to do it. So $2 a month, get you in. Love to see it.
I also wanted to give a big thank you to Wizards of the Coast for making us ambassadors for this set. This is great to be part of something so cool. You should go check out the set.
We got a big video in store. What are we going to be covering, you might be asking? Stay tuned. We are covering the commander for each precon, the game plan, the strongest reprints that you'll find in the deck, the best new cards that they added, and there are a lot of new cards. Some budget additions for the deck if you want to upgrade it, some non-budget additions if you want to bling it out and get the best cards possible, and some cuts to make room for those awesome cards. And just so you know, this is a power rating, so we will be ranking these 4 precons in order from worst, what we think is least powerful, to best, what we think is most powerful.
There are so many new cards between these decks, and the flavor is a home run. I'm super excited to be talking about them. We're going to start off at deck number 4. This is Limit Break. The commander is Cloud, X-Soldier, 2 white, green, red for a 4/4 with haste. When he enters, attach up to 1 target equipment you control to it. Whenever Cloud attacks, you draw a card for each equipped attacking creature you control. Then, if he has power 7 or greater, you create 2 treasure tokens. So the game plan is you want to equip a lot of creatures and attack with all of them so you can get a bunch of damage and also get a bunch of cards with Cloud out on the field. Get Cloud to 7 power, and you're also going to get additional effects. Tifa also is the alternate commander for this, and she also has additional power when you get her to 7 or more.
Yeah, Cloud really wants you to have equipment that gives him 3 power, because then he's like a gold span dragon. Plus, 7 is the magic number with commander damage. That means 3 strikes and you're out. You can KO somebody, and that's very real game plan for equipment decks, so keep that in mind. As we go to the strongest reprints, this deck has Clever Concealment in it. Great way to protect not only your board state for free if you have enough creatures to convoke it, which is very easy, but also all of your equipments from like a Farewell or something.
There's also Skull Clamp in here. There's a couple of things that make like 1/1 soldiers and stuff, and it just makes it so that people might not want to block Cloud. You're going to be getting a bunch of cards out of it.
Yeah, it's great on offense, it's great on defense, it's great as a weird sack outlet. What a busted magic card. Next, sort of the Animist. Great way to ramp. I like that this equipment deck has a few of the ramp slots, like, oh, instead of Elvish Mystic, we got sort of the Animist to trigger the critical mass of equipment stuff that we have going on and ramp us still.
But we have to talk about the best new cards. Every deck has so many, so instead of the usual 3 best new cards, we're actually going to be talking about 5 per deck. The first one's going to be Lifestream's Blessing. It's 4 green for an instant. Draw X cards, where X is the greatest power among creatures you controlled as you cast the spell. If the spell was cast from exile, you gain twice X life, and it's foretold for 4 and a green. I think this is a pretty cool card because it completely gets around the clause where it's like, oh, target a creature, well, I'm going to kill it in response so you get nothing. No, instead, it matters when you casted the spell. I love the fact that they're working around that now.
Yeah, so if you have a 7/7, a 6/6, and a 5/5, you cast this spell, they respond, they kill the 7/7, you still draw 7 because that's what you had. Some of the spells, like you said, target, those are a disaster if they don't go your way. Some of them, like a Rishkar's Expertise, just say the greatest power. So in that case, if they respond to it, if you have a 7, 6, and a 5, if they kill your 7, you draw 6 off of like a Rishkar's Expertise. But this gives you the full insurance, where in that scenario, and it even still has Foretell for whatever reason. I don't know if that's like a a flavor thing, but sure, I probably won't foretell this too much, but it's a nice option to have. If you have nothing else going on turn 2, you can confuse your opponents and foretell a card.
There's actually a fair amount of foretell in this deck. I don't think it goes around that well with the commanders, but I do think it's an interesting mechanic and might help things like Cascade decks in the future.
Yeah, there's also Bugenhagen, I think I said that right. Wise Elder, 1 and a green for a 1/3 reach. At the beginning of your upkeep, if you control a creature with power 7 or greater, draw a card. Hey, Cloud's trying to do that all day. And this taps for mana of any color, so we play this on 2, Cloud on 4, some equipment in there in the middle, give him to 7 power, make a bunch of treasures, hit somebody for 100 million, aka 7, and then start drawing cards on your upkeeps.
To allude to the power level of this deck and why it's number 4, a lot of the reason is because it is just chock full of these legends, and a lot of them don't really mesh together very well. But this one, as a mana dork that also helps you draw cards, is a great way and a great play to be able to put down early. There's also Kate Sith, Fortune Teller, in here. 3 and a red for a 3/3. At the beginning of your turn, you scry 1, then exile the top card of your library. You can play that card this turn. When you exile a card this way, target creature you control gets +X/+0 until end of turn, where X is that card's mana value. I like the fact that you can stack the top a little bit, pick which you want to play, and also give the extra stats to. It's kind of like a Levon a little bit, right? Where you're just like giving extra stats to things, and it gives you a little bit of card advantage too.
It reminds me of, I think it's Tavern Brawler. That's the background that almost has this exact text, except you don't scry 1 and it's not a creature. But you get to say, let's go gambling at your upkeep, and then you get to spin that wheel. Soldier Military Program is next. 2 and a white for an enchantment. At the beginning of combat, on your turn, choose 1. If you control a commander, you can choose both. I like what they're doing here. You either create a 1/1 white soldier and or put a +1/+1 counter on each of up to 2 soldiers you control. Very interestingly, this does not target for whatever reason. So if that comes up, make sure that your opponents know they have to respond before you do this.
There aren't too many soldiers in here, but I think that this can be great if you're putting it in a different deck and it just has that ability, or it just feeds itself. I do like the fact that it doesn't rely on you to have soldiers to begin with. Next is Cloud's Limit Break, 1 and a white for an instant with tiered. You choose 1 additional cost. If you pay 0 extra, you can destroy target tapped creature. 1 is, if you pay 1 extra, it's destroy any number of target tapped creatures with different controllers, or 3, destroy all tapped creatures. I think that's quite interesting, especially if you're pairing it with something like Taunt from the Rampart, where everyone's stuff is going to be tapped, or you could just use it as 1 in a white, kill a creature that attacked.
Yeah, this has a lot of modes. I mean, in an emergency, yeah. If someone's coming at you with some big hasty thing, kill it for 2 mana. Doesn't feel great, but I'm glad I have that option when the other modes are like way more value. If you set up like a Githzerai Monk on the end step, tap all their things, untap yours, and just go, okay, one-sided board wipe, that's a very real upside. And then I feel like where you're going to settle and cast most of the time is probably the middle, where you're going to take out 2 different creatures, or maybe in an ideal world 3, but as soon as you pay 3 mana to kill 2 things, you feel pretty good about that.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about, where it's like if everything is tapped to begin with when you're using things like goad cards or something like that, it might be easy to get that middle mode where you're able to take out 3 things.
But now to move on to upgrades for this deck, we're going to look at the budget ones first, and I'm thinking inventory management. Whenever I see a deck that has a board state full of random equipments that don't have a home, they're unequipped, their original user was killed tragically, I think, what if we played a haste creature and then inventory management and just put them all on it and then just attack for 1 million?
There are so many good Fallout cards that synergize really well with this, because the Fallout deck, Dogmeat, also synergized a lot with like equipments and auras, which this deck also wants to do. There's also Hexplate Wallbreaker. This was a card that BZ spec'd on, but I think it would go great in this deck.
Yeah, it gives you extra combats. This is very, very good. And it comes with a body, so that you can move stuff around, maybe keep some creatures back to chump block. We also have Kellen the Fey-Blooded / Birthright Boon. We want equipments. We want the best equipments. And it makes it so that, you know, even though this is a budget card, you can splurge on one of your favorite equipment, something big and pricey that we'll get to, I'm sure, and then have access to it every game with these other budget cards. So you don't have to spend $300 on all the best equipment. You can just pick 1 or 2 to put in this deck that you really like.
I think it's also interesting because Kellen cares if he's buffed, because he will buff the rest of your team based on how many equipment he has attached to him. Cloud also wants you to be attacking with a bunch of creatures with equipment on them, so being able to have a good body that also buffs the rest of your team when he's equipped is very synergistic to this deck.
Totally works. And speaking of Fallout, Armory Paladin's a great way to get card advantage. As you're casting these equipment, you can keep the cards flowing.
Not to throw another IP in there, but Bureau Headmaster is amazing in this deck. It's going to reduce the cost of your equipment and the equip costs.
Yeah, I think the equip cost is the bigger gain here, but we'll take it. It's really, really nice. I think there's even like a random throwaway common from all will be one that reduces equip cost. Maybe you even want that guy to get the Phyrexian IP in on the mess. I don't know what it is about Universes Beyond, but they love Naya equipments.
They really do. But we have to move on to the non-budget ads. Another IP coming in is Codsworth, Handy Helper. This is going to be a mana dork for those equipments and also will help you cheat equip costs too.
Yeah, Excalibur from Assassin's Creed is just a huge stat boost. Cloud loves this thing. This maybe is the one you splurge on and then go find it with Birthright Boon and open the armory and all those budget tutors.
Leonin Shikari is going to be very tricky in this deck because you can equip stuff at instant speed, which means that you might be able to smack with your commanders a lot more than they were actually thinking.
Yeah, we haven't talked a lot about one of the most important things that equipment Voltron decks want is evasion. Shadow Spear is going to be your way to trample over, negate any possibility of chump blocks. And hey, it even comes with that once in 100 games, someone's got an indestructible thing that you can destroy with the activating ability of 1.
And Catechist, Staff of Hermes, is also in here because we want to have a little bit of life. We're going to be tapping out for big creatures. This will give your thing lifelink, and if you have 30 or more life, it's going to get +5/+5 and a bunch of other text, which I think is very easy to do in Commander.
Cloud is just going to be rolling with like one sword from every IP. He's going to take people out.
But we're going to move on to 5 cuts from here. Heidegger, Shinra Executive is one of them. I feel like this cares about soldier count and making them for opponents with more creatures. That is its own deck. This entire deck has a bunch of cool legendary creatures, but they don't synergize well with Cloud or Tifa, so a lot of these cuts will be their own deck.
Yeah, all of these decks, I guess this is a good time to mention it in the middle of the first deck, but all of these decks are going to be jam-packed with a bunch of flavorful legendary creatures and cards and equipment and locations from the games. I think each deck is its own game. And so you're going to give up a little bit of synergy. There's a lot of cool stuff that's going to be dangled in front of you like, whoa, what about this avenue I could go down? And that's totally cool. But we just have to cut those cards to focus this deck and then take those cards out and build a new deck. Also, Avalanche of Sector 7 cares about your opponents having artifact. That kind of feels like its own thing.
Yeah, it can be your commander in a different deck, but I don't think it works that well here. Also, Ultimate Magic Meteor. It's going to be this big board wipe that you can foretell, but it's 5 in a red whether you foretell it or whether you cast it from your hand at sorcery speed. You can't cheat it like Delayed Blast Fireball in a Cascade deck, and it's always going to be expensive, so I don't think it's that great in here.
Barrett, Avalanche Leader, cares about attaching equipments to rebels you control. How do you feel about this one?
He's going to be spawning in rebels when you cast equipment, which can be very cool with Cloud's ability, but I feel like this is more about beefing up Cloud and making sure he gets to be big power and having a bunch of little other things. I feel like overall this can just be kind of swept to the side, either made to its own deck or just in favor of more synergistic pieces.
Do you feel like this deck is more about going big or going wide?
I think you can go either, but I feel like my main priority for this would be building up Cloud to 7, and I think that because of that, I wouldn't want to split my advances too much.
Yep, we also have Aerith, Last Ancient. It's kind of another example of just its own deck. It cares about life gain. We are so far off from that track. I don't think we can really spend too much effort making Aerith good when you can just build an Aerith deck or take it out of the deck and appreciate it as a card.
Yeah, it definitely feels like its own deck. But we're going to move on to number 3. It's Revival Trance, and the commander is Terra, Herald of Hope, red, white, black for a 3/3. At the beginning of combat in your turn, mill 2 cards. She gains flying until end of turn. Whenever she deals combat damage to a player, you could pay 2. When you do, return target creature card with power 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. This is a super cool one, and I'm not just saying that because I love Mardu.
Yeah, this is gives me a little bit of like Alicia Who Smiles at Death vibes, but it's definitely a different card, and it can reanimate bigger creatures. And I also think it's interesting because Terra just gives herself evasion. She's like, don't worry, getting through is really what you want. I'll just get myself flying. And in case you are having trouble finding cards to put in the graveyard, I'll just put them in there for you, and you can figure that out. It does a lot of the work for you, and it feels really good. And this deck's going to look to like reanimate bigger threats since we get that mill and just get consistent advantage with Terra. Maybe throw in a little evasion like a Key to the City or something, but mostly Terra does it herself.
There's some awesome reprints in here too. One of them being Reanimate. Oh, only the strongest Reanimate spell in Magic.
The spell all other Reanimate spells are named after, coincidentally. And how about Ruinous Ultimatum? I mean, when you play these Precons against each other, this is going to be one of the best cards in any of the 4 decks in terms of breaking a board stall wide open. It even allows Terra and other stuff to hit right away because they don't have anything to block with. It's all gone.
Plus, Rise of the Dark Realms is in here too. If you want a mass reanimate and you're like, oh, well, I can't get through with Terra anymore, they have too many flyers, don't worry, you can just steal everything from everyone's graveyards if you have enough mana.
And you certainly can, in this Precon, follow up a Ruinous Ultimatum next turn with a Rise of the Dark Realms, that's just game over. I mean, they're going to need a farewell or you win. You just have 50 power in play. The fact that this deck has those I win buttons helps bump it up above the Cloud deck. I think there's nothing wrong with any of these 4 decks, by the way. I think they're all pretty good, but something has to be number 4, and I think this one does squeak out above the Cloud Limit Break deck. We're going to go to the best new cards. First one, Celis Rune Knight. Oh my god. This card is crazy. 1 white, black, red for a 4/4. When she enters, discard any number of cards, then draw that many cards plus 1. Whenever one or more other creatures you control enter, if one or more of them entered from a graveyard or was cast from a graveyard, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control. Every part of this, I just feel like I'm getting extra. She's giving me more than any card I've ever seen before. I don't even think I can name a creature that says when it enters, draw, discard any number, then draw that many, +1. It just gives you a bonus. So it's like a cantrip plus more. It fills a graveyard. This thing also has infinite combos with any card that has persist, because when it dies and it comes back, it will enter with a -1 counter. Then she says, cool, put a +1/+1 counter on all your stuff. So anything with persist and a sack outlet gives infinite +1/+1 counters to the rest of your team. And in the case of like Murderous Redcap, which you could totally throw into this deck, it just kills everyone on the spot.
That is really wild, and having this as an alternate commander in your back pocket is super cool for that.
I could totally see switching this one, by the way. We're going to go under the assumption that you kept Terra, but Celis is really good.
Next is the Warring Triad, 3 mana for a 5/5 flying trample haste. As long as there are fewer than 8 cards in your graveyard, it isn't a creature. If you tap and mill a card, target player adds 1 mana of any color. That's pretty funny that it's target player, so you could give other people mana if you really want to. But you want to be filling your graveyard to begin with. There are very cheap ways to be able to do that. So being able to play this on turn 3 or something, fill your graveyard just a little bit, whether you're doing cantrips that mill or something like that too. And then smacking for 5 immediately, that is good value.
This card is so weird. It's like a god. It's got all the god text, but then it's a mana rock. It's like Manolith plus, I don't know, Kefnet or something. And it's just very silly. Next, we're going to go to Kefka, Dancing Mad, 5 black red for a 6/6. During your turn, he has Indestructible. At the beginning of your end step, exile a card at random from each opponent's graveyard. You may cast any number of spells from among those exiled for free, and then each player who owns a spell you cast this way loses life equal to its mana value. This is tricky. You want to hit good stuff, so maybe if you are playing Kefka, you've got like Lion Sash going around nuking their small stuff so that you get to hit their biggest things, or you can play some Graveyard Hate and then try to just kill something. There's a lot of ways to go with this. You also just could play it and profit.
Yeah, I think this is really an interesting one, and it could be its own deck too. But I think in the 99, it's one of those weird spots, but I would love to try it out.
Yeah, definitely a value machine. We also have Rejoin the Fight, 5 of black sorcery, mill 3. Then starting with the next opponent in turn order, you know a card's going to be good when it says that line of text. Each opponent chooses a creature card in your graveyard that hasn't been chosen. Return each card chosen this way to the battlefield under your control. So this does not let you choose, but it's very interesting though. It also mills 3, so you have a chance, even if you set up your graveyard to, have a mana dork or something dumb fly in there and mess it up. But this is an interesting card that I definitely wanted to highlight. Not sure, 6 mana is a lot, but it was something I wanted to highlight.
Yeah, I think especially if you can find things that, maybe delve away cards. If you have the new Teval or something like that, maybe you can utilize that in one of those decks. Maybe not perfect in this deck, but I think it's a cool one. And
honestly, you just pulled out like the perfect commander. With Teval, you literally pay the 5 generic of this spell to get rid of all the stuff you don't want.
Yeah, and there's Esper's to Magicite. Maybe this card is good. It's 3 and a black for an instant. Exile each opponent's graveyard. When you do, choose up to 1 target creature card exile this way. Create a token that's a copy of it, except it's an artifact and loses all other card types.
What do you think about this one? This is such a weird card.
I think it's interesting. Up to 1 target creature card exiled this way. So you can only get 1 from this total, but it is a token, so it's not like they can exile stuff in like response to the target either.
Yeah.
But no, you can, but like
no, because by the time it's targeted, it's already exiled. There's no way to interact with that.
I think it's interesting. I think 4 mana might be a lot for it, but at instant speed, maybe if you mill something that's really, really good.
You have to hit something good, and it has to have an ETB because even if it's just like a 10/10, it loses the creature type, so you can't really do anything with it. And what a weird card! But that's just like that makes me think. Okay, what do we do? How do we make this thing good? But as for budget adds into the Terra Precon, I'm thinking Living Death. She already mills. She wants to reanimate. We've got a bunch of big, beefy dudes already in this deck. Living Death turns this into like a board wipe for everyone else. Maybe they get back a few things, and then your whole deck goes into play, and they lose.
Yeah, Flare of Malice is going to be a great removal spell in here. You already want to be sacking things because you can bring them back very easily with Terra. So you sack your little small thing, make everyone get rid of their best thing, in theory, and then bring it back when you attack with Terra.
Yeah, this is not a deck that has a bunch of sack outlets, and I don't even know if you necessarily want them because you're trying to focus on the Reanimator thing, and then you just keep getting them back. I think Flare of Malice is a good way to interact while also sacrificing and not committing to playing like a Viscera Seer if you really don't want to. Sister Hospitaler, weird card that I wanted to shout out. Warhammer IP coming into play. It gets back a creature and you gain life equal to the power or mana value of the creature, one of those two. And this is a good 3-power creature to keep getting back with Terra.
Threefold Thunderhulk is going to be awesome in here because its power is 0 in the graveyard, but you're going to be bringing it back. It's going to make a ton of bodies. It's just going to be so much value. And if you could put any more counters on it, when it attacks or enters again, you'll be getting even more little guys.
I mean, we've loved this card lately.
It's been good.
I feel like we talk about it all the time, especially in Precon level decks, budget decks, bracket 2. Threefold Thunderhulk, what a guy. He's the new Mirror Battlesphere. If you're a fan of Mirror Battlesphere, please try out Threefold Thunderhulk. We also have Baldin, Century Herdmaster. This might not look great because it looks like it says toughness matters. Not really. This says if it attacks, you just win the game because your creatures get +6/+6, and assigning toughness versus power, it's almost irrelevant. +6/+6 on attack, and it's got 0 power, so you can always get it back with Terra. You're going to go hit with Terra, bring this back, and your opponents are going to go, uh-oh.
That is going to be gigantic swings too. But we have some non-budget ads, one of them being Dauthi Voidwalker. Dauthi Voidwalker is just a great card overall, and it's going to be able to exile your opponent's graveyard too.
It's so annoying in this deck. You could just keep sacrificing it every turn, assuming there's been a buildup of void counters, cast the best thing, and then just hit with Terra and get back Dauthi because it has 3 power. Like, I am not ready to play against that because most of my decks automatically fold to a Dauthi Voidwalker anyway, but multiple, it's too far.
I'm so excited for that. There's also Breach the Multiverse, one of my favorites. You're going to be able to actually mill a ton of cards and get all those best creatures back. It doesn't even matter if you milled them previously in the game because you can pick from those too.
Most of the time, I find that if your opponents don't have a board wipe after this, you just win the game. In a couple turns, not immediately, but it is a card that demands an answer or you win, and you can kind of just spend the rest of your turns developing until they find an answer to your board. It's a 4-for-1 that also fuels Terra for the rest of the game. It's really, really solid. I like Palantir of Orthanc as yet another Universes Beyond. I don't know if we've had Lord of the Rings in yet. It mills you, it builds up, but since this is a Reanimator deck, you have the extra bonus of playing mind games with your opponent because if they choose even to mill 3 cards, they could take like 10 damage off of your big giant things.
I've seen this card deal a lot of damage. In the first, you're like, yeah, sure, I'll take whatever damage that you want to throw at me. But at a certain point, it gets very serious. So it's like, oh, this can actually take me out of the game or severely make me, go down like 8 or 10. Mostly Beezy.
Yeah, I was going to say mostly me because every time you play this against me, I just go, send it. You don't have anything, and then they hit
15.
Me. I'll full send on 4. Don't choose me because you're not going to draw a card, but you are going to kill me if that's a nice consolation. Another card I've loved lately is Overlord of the Balemerc. Just fuels your graveyard, card advantage, sticks in play. It's just too much text. It gives you too much value, and it's going to give you like a 2.5 for 1. Every time you play it, I love this card.
And Ranger Captain of Eos. You ever want to lock your opponents out of the game? Why don't you just keep sacking it, making sure they can't cast non-creatures, and then bringing it back with your commander? I think that's pretty nasty and a good way to take this.
Yeah, it's a good way to go if you want to play sack outlets because it goes and finds Viscera Seer, it goes and finds Carrion Feeder, and then if there's one person who's like going on and on about having a board wipe, you stop them every time by continuously getting this back with Terra. Super funny. I think you also get to see a little bit of where this deck falls short with the cuts. Some of these cards just have nothing to do with the game plan. They're from a 5th Precon that never got released. We have Interceptor, Shadow's Hound. This is a payoff for all of your assassins, and if you're wondering, Terra is not an assassin, so we're going to skip that one. Umaro, Raging Yeti. This card's cool, and it gives you one of 3 payoffs, but it's chosen at random, and one of them is discard your hand, draw 4. That could be a disaster if that goes off, and I think this has to either be your commander or forget about it.
It could also be really good, though, if you want creatures in the graveyard to begin with, I think you could take that gamble.
I think part of the problem is, like, I play it, and I like my hand, and he goes, hey, why don't you discard that? And
well, that's just you because you always get unlucky.
Yeah,
there's
just me.
There's also Snort in here. He's a wheel variant, but at least he hurts opponents. But wheels are usually never my first option to be able to give my opponents things.
And I have no idea why this is called Snort. I don't know what that is. This is a sorcery. Please let me know what that is. Sabin, Master Monk, is kind of just understated. I don't know. You want to probably pump him up in some way, and this deck is not interested in that. It doesn't have the facilities for that. So play him as a commander, but we don't need him here.
And there's Go-Go, Mysterious Mime in here. Just like so many of the other legends, this is a separate deck. We don't need to be focusing it in this deck in particular.
Yeah, you can maybe do some cool stuff with copying Terra and then having 2 combat damage triggers, but this is 4 mana. I think you have to go bigger than that, or else it's not going to be worth the cost you pay for it. Next up, we are going to introduce our number 2 deck from Final Fantasy. It is Scions and Spellcraft. The commander is Y'shtola, Knights Blessed. 1 blue, white, black for a 2/4 vigilance. At the beginning of each end step, if a player lost 4 or more life this turn, you draw a card. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell with mana value 3 or greater, Y'shtola deals 2 damage to each opponent and you gain 2 life. This deck hits hard thanks to the commander. She does a lot of the heavy lifting, honestly, but this deck wants to chain spells that cost 3+ that are non-creatures, making opponents lose life, some a little bit of paying life for yourself. There's like a legendary sub-theme, and there are 28 spells in the deck that cost 3 or more and are non-creatures to trigger Y'shtola.
This is such a weird one. I like it a lot, but I think the first line as the beginning of each end step, so you can trigger 4 times per turn cycle. If a player, which could be you, lost 4 or more life this turn, you draw a card. Okay, so if I just pay some life into, Necropotence or something like that, and I just keep doing it every single turn, I can keep getting more cards off of it. That's wild, and it triggers off other people's combat, so basically they have to be swinging at you too. I feel like this puts a big target on you, but it also is just a very big upside also.
Yeah, and gaining 2 life off of the casting of those spells is going to be huge for the deck. Definitely a solid commander, but we got some reprints in here too, and you mentioned paying 4 life maybe yourself to trigger the card draw. How about Snuff Out? It costs 4, technically, but then you gain 2, they lose 2. Pay 4, destroy something, and this is all for 0 mana.
That is such a good deal, and it synergizes so well with this. There's also Authority of the Consuls, because when you're paying life so much, because you want to be able to trigger that life loss every single time, you're going to need a way to replenish your life total, and Authority of the Consuls is a great turn 1 play to be able to do that.
This isn't even the best deck for Authority of the Consuls. Like, it's going to be okay, but I think ultimately you can kind of just jam this in any deck, and it'll gain you like 15 life, and it'll be pretty annoying. So it's happy to see it here, and maybe you cut it for, in a different deck, but it's a really good reprint to see. We also have Archaeomancer's Map. This is a nice little way to do some land finding, and then if they do ramp, if they're playing green, if they do ramp, that's totally a Magic phrase. I play Magic. If they do ramp, you get planes.
It's going to be pretty easy because everyone do ramp in a game, especially when you have a green player out there.
As for the best new cards in the deck, there are obviously a lot to choose from, a lot of good ones too. I like Summon Good King Mog the 12th. 4 and a white for an enchantment creature, Saga Moogle. A lot of words there. Chapter 1, create 2 1/2 white Moogle creature tokens with lifelink. Chapters 2 and 3, whenever you cast a non-creature spell this turn, create a token that's a copy of a non-Saga token you control. And Chapter 4, the last one, put 2 +1/+1 counters on each other Moogle you control. And this is a 4/4 flying lifelink. So for the next 2 turns after you play it, you can attack with it. Then the 4th one comes around, he dies, but he's giving you a bunch of Moogles, a bunch of counters, maybe even better tokens if that's what you have.
I think these enchantment creature sagas are definitely a weird thing to be introducing in here. I feel like as long as the first couple modes are really good, or the creature has some sort of really awesome abilities, that it can work. And having flying lifelink gives us very good evasion.
Ultimately, I think this card is worse for being a creature. I'd rather it be a little bit more protected against removal, but that means because it's a creature, they can sort of, I think, push it a little bit, especially in like the commander environment. We also have Champions from Beyond in this deck, X white for an enchantment. When this enchantment enters, you get X 1/1 hero creature tokens that are colorless, which is kind of cool. And the light party, whenever you attack with 4 or more creatures, you scry 2, then draw a card. Full party is whenever you attack with 8 or more creatures, they get +4/+4. And I was looking at this card, and I was like, seems kind of whatever. Like, when am I going to attack with 8 creatures? Like, I have to attack with 4 to get the bonus. But then I'm thinking, it's just X white make X dudes. That's kind of Precons standard, for like, oh, I get a decent board state. Well, you pay like 6 mana, you get 4 dudes. and the rest is gravy. You already got a card's worth out of it. So if you get to scry 2 and draw once or twice, awesome. You're probably not going to get the 8th thing. But if you do, it's amazing and it's all bonus.
I don't know. I think you get the 8th thing fairly, I'm not going to say fairly easily, but in the right deck, whether that be like an Adeline deck, or if you're just spitting out tokens like a Caesar deck or something, I think you can get to 8 pretty fast. And especially since this spots you tokens too. Maybe you cast this on turn 4 or 5, you get 2 or 3 tokens out of this. Well, if you're making things that's like, oh, when it comes in, you create a 1/1, I think you can get to 8 not that badly.
Yeah, the only thing to worry about with this card is if you have like mobilized tokens, they don't count towards the 8 because they are created attacking and they are not declared as an attacker. But this does give you pretty much all of what you need to get the 8 next turn and set something up. After that, I wouldn't expect to get it a ton, but this card still seems pretty solid. Like I said, all of that is speculative bonus on X, white, white, make X dudes. We have Alice Leveler. That's not right. 2 and a white for a 3/2. It partners with someone else that we're not going to talk about right now. It's got first strike and dual cast. The second spell you cast each turn costs 2 less to cast. I just looked at this card and I was like, whoa, maybe this is a cool commander. I'm sure they work well together because I know Alphanod says when you cast your second spell, draw a card. That's cool. That's blue-white. I'm just looking at what a white card that says your second spell costs 2 less. You can just fire this off on turn 3 and then play like a Signet for free, and instants go absolutely bananas with this.
Yeah, that's crazy, especially if you can do some sort of cantrip, preordain, and then into something that you're just saving 2 mana on. That is an awesome discount.
This card looks really cool. I would recommend trying it out in the 99 without Alphanod, even though that is a commander option you could pursue. Who's next?
Ardbert, Warrior of Darkness, 1 white black for a 2/2. Whenever you cast a white spell, you put a 1/1 counter on each legendary creature you control. They gain vigilance until end of turn. Whenever you cast a black spell, you put a 1/1 counter on each legendary creature you control. They gain menace until end of turn. So if you cast a white and a black spell, you get 2 counters and all of your stuff gets vigilance and menace so long as everything you have is a legendary creature. I think that even if you only have a couple legendaries out, that is a sweet deal.
This card is so cool. I might build an Ardbert deck. I'm just thinking about the absolute shenanigans you can pull off of even just playing a legend on turn 1, a legend on turn 2, and good old Ardbert, which is a great name, on turn 3. You follow it up with a couple gold cards. 2 or 3 is not that hard. And then you just have a million +1/+1 counters. Now, let alone all the stuff you could do with like, hey, whenever you would put 1 on, you put an extra 1. This is 2 separate triggers of that. So if you have a hardened scales, let's presume you have that or some version of that. Then you play a black-white spell, you get 4 +1/+1 counters on your dudes.
Yeah, that's pretty nasty. And I think that there's so many legendary creatures that are coming out, whether you're talking about like Lothos of the world or you're talking about anything from Fallout, where you can be able to get these going pretty cheaply.
And there are even legends from other IPs, but we might not ever talk about that. We also have Papalimo Totalimo, white-black for a 1/2. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, it deals 1 damage to each opponent and you gain 1 life. And if you know anything about me, you know that I'm going to love this next ability. 4-tap, sack it. Each opponent who lost life this turn sacrifices a creature with the greatest power among creatures they control. It's a weird gutter snipe / soul shatter thing. So if this is targeted by removal because it can rack up damage over time, you can just respond and sacrifice it to get a 3-for-1 out of the deal. Or what I probably will do with this, play it early, treat it like, it'll gain me 4 life and it'll deal 4 damage to each of them over the course of the game. And when the opportunity arises, I'm going to proactively sack this and just take out 3 things.
I mean, I like the fact that it's flexible. Casting non-creature spells, especially if you're doing a lot of removal or, you're ramping with artifacts or whatever, it is very good. But if you're putting this, you could even swap this into like the Tarot one, for instance, because you can be able to get it back. I think that this is a super awesome card. It doesn't just need to be in a deck that you're casting, non-creature spells left and right. If you're casting maybe 1 per turn, you can still get effects out of this.
Totally, yeah. I know the second ability looks like, oh, they have to lose life, but the card just fuels itself. So it really isn't much of a drawback that they have to lose life, even though on any other creature that would be like kind of rough. As for budget adds for this deck, I thought of Savine's Reclamation immediately. I had to double check that it wasn't in the deck because it seems like such a slam dunk inclusion. You cast it once, trigger Ishtola, you flash it back. You cast it a second time, trigger Ishtola, you deal 4 damage, you're going to draw a card on the end step. And one thing about Savine's Reclamation is if you put lands out with it, it makes flashing it back and casting other stuff afterwards easier. So it works in every aspect.
Deep Analysis is also going to be awesome in here because you can cast it twice with its flashback ability, but I also think just keeping your hand full is so important because you're going to be able to trigger your commander when you have just a plethora of spells in your hand.
Yeah, one of the things I want to do with Ishtola is cast those 3+ mana things, but not pay 3 mana. You can't really sling spells when they all cost 3 mana. That's like 3 per turn maximum. So things that reduce the cost or cost less, even though they say the mana value, like a flashback spell, deep analysis is great. Same is true of Treasure Cruise. It costs 8, but we're going to pay 1 or 2 for it. This upgrade probably requires you to put a few other smaller things, some cantrips, maybe some self-mill in, but Treasure Cruise is one of the cards I think of most when I think of cards you can cheat the mana value of.
Battle Screech is also a card you can cheat the mana of. I really like the fact that you're going to be able to punch in with little guys in the air, but also be able to get them for free, basically.
And because your commander is white, you can rest assured that you can always cast Battle Screech twice, no matter what your board state looks like, because as long as you have Ishtrola, you go, boom, pay 4, trigger it, make 2 dudes, tap all 3 of them, make 2 more dudes, trigger it again, and now you're drawing cards. And you just gained 4 life, and you dealt 4 damage to each of them in that scenario, and all you did was pay 4 mana.
There's also the Kenrith's Royal Funeral in here. This is a great Orzhov card, but what does it do?
I was really excited about this one. It like cares about legends, and this deck has way more legends than the rest of them. I know they all have legends sort of thrown in, but this one has more, and it actually has payoffs for them, which I thought was sweet. So we can put Kenrith's Royal Funeral in, take a few of them out of our graveyard, draw cards, and then our legends cost less. Kind of just does exactly what this deck wants, and I think you could definitely lean into the fact that you have a bunch of legends in this deck, unlike some of the other ones where we go, you probably want to cut 6 to 7 or 10 legends out of them.
But we have to move on to non-budget ads. The first one, or ones at least, being Fierce Guardianship and Deadly Rollick. These are free spells, but they're also going to be able to trigger your commander because they cost more 3 or more, which is what she wants.
Yeah, anything like this is just going to be absolutely premium. They're not the most exciting cards to talk about, but we had to mention them. I also love Beseech the Mirror. It casts the card that it finds, so you can trigger your Stola twice off of just Beseech the Mirror. Plus, it's a really strong tutor, so you're probably getting something really strong. You can go all the way up to like the One Ring is like the best thing to get with this. You know, just throw game changers on game changers on game changers, and Ishtola's going to keep triggering.
Lotho is also going to be a great way to get some mana, and you can lose some life from it too. You can trigger it yourself, and when other people obviously are going to trigger it, because everyone loves casting 2 or more spells, you're going to be able to fuel into Ishtola's ability.
Yeah, and this deck has like a little mini cast 2 spells something that we saw with, I think, the brother and sister who have partnered before.
Okay, not the most exciting non-budget ad, but Shocklands are going to be awesome in here because you can trigger that lose 4 life, and you're going to be able to get all of your colors untapped.
Just a reminder that you can, hurt yourself with your mana base. Fetches, shocks, pain lands, even like a Tarnished Citadel you could throw in here, just as an emergency if you don't have any other way to trigger your commander. And Bolas' Citadel, it's busted, it's a game changer. You can actually start storming off in a very unique way. You could add Bolas' Citadel to any black deck, but this deck specifically has extra synergy because it helps refund the life you're paying by slinging stuff off the top, and it lets you keep triggering your Stola to make basically a win condition, and it can let you go extra deep. If you throw it in a random deck, you're going to spin it, get 5 spells, and then, be really low on life, and you have to figure something out. But with your Stola, you're like, oh, you guys might be dead right now.
But we have to move on to some cuts. First one being Vindicate. This, to me, is just a complete precon card.
Just filler.
I don't really see it in any decks that people brew nowadays, except for in the precons.
Yeah, I feel like also Siphon Mind is a card from like 2012 Magic. It is a 3-for-1. It's just a little expensive, and I don't think it affects the game enough right away. There's other stuff that's just proven to be better. Tataru Taru wants opponents to draw cards not on their turn. This is cool. This has Smothering Tithe vibes if you can build around it, but you really got to build around it, and this deck cannot do that.
I'm going to be putting that in my Nekuzar-S deck. I'm excited for that one, but this is not the right one. There's also Hildebrand Manderville. This kind of just seems like a meme. This doesn't seem to go very well with this deck sub-themes.
Yeah, I laughed at the guys like JoJo Pose. It was pretty funny, but I don't know what I'm supposed to do with them. Eye of Nidhogg is cool. It is another one of these string of enchantments that goads something and gives it some kind of bonus. I think you have to really care about auras or goading, maybe an Ariete or a goad commander that I can't name right now. One of those two will want this, but not Ishtola.
But we're moving on to our number 1 deck. This is Moxfield.com, the best place online to be looking at these decks. If you want to see changes in real time, whether you are changing them, your friends are changing them, or they're updating to make sure all of the lists for the precons are up to date, Moxfield is your best place to do it.
You can follow your friends, you can search their decks, you can search your own decks, you can put your decks in folders to make it all easier to find, you can sort, tag, customize. It's really, really easy, and you can see the unedited Precon deck list for all the Final Fantasy commanders through the Wizards of the Coast account run by the guys at Moxfield. They are amazing. They absolutely know their stuff, and you can ensure that those are the unaltered decks versus like if Greg 8690416 uploads a deck that's called Counter Blitz. How am I supposed to know that that's the real Counter Blitz?
But the number 1 is actually Counter Blitz. BZ was alluding to it. The commander is Titus, Yuna's Guardian, white, blue, green for a 3/3. At the beginning of your combat on your turn, you can move a counter from target creature you control onto a second target creature you control. Doesn't say just once, just whatever counter it has around. Whenever one or more creatures you control with counters on them deal combat damage to a player, you can draw a card and proliferate, but only once each turn. You want to deal combat damage while Titus is out to proliferate and draw cards, and you also want to get creatures to be very big and use other cards in the deck to give them special effects like Trample, Double Strike, and more.
Yeah, what did you like about this deck that helped solidify it as number 1 above the rest of them?
I felt like in this deck, all of the legends were like counters based, or moving counters, or it really played into this counters theme, while everything underneath there was always just a random legendary or 2 or 10 where it was like, gain some life. This is a combat deck.
Discard your hand.
This is a combat deck.
Yeah.
I felt like this deck really played into all of the creatures in it very, very well. I don't think it's the most exciting when it comes to like, this isn't a new thing that people haven't explored, but I think it is the most well done deck overall.
Yeah, we got some strong reprints. I was speaking of it earlier. It's actually in here. Farewell. If you want to reset the board, if you want to stop those Rises of the Dark Realms, I guess that's the plural of Rises of the Dark Realms, Rises. You can use Farewell. What a card. It's not a game changer, is it? It could be, though.
No, it's not, but people do want it to be. There's also Bane of Progress in here. It does counters, it does removal, and it's a big boy. It's going to make your team very, very strong.
And one of the best outlets for putting counters on things is Walking Ballista. I know we have Bane of Progress in here. Don't worry. It doesn't matter. When you have Walking Ballista out as a must-answer threat, if you can give it Death Touch or Lifelink at all, it goes absolutely ham, and it puts counters on itself. It's just a nice little workhorse because you only ever pay 2 mana for this thing.
There are so many new cards, and I feel like all of them play very, very well with the counters theme. The first one being Sphere Grid. 1 and a green for an enchantment. Whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, put a 1/1 counter on that creature. And creatures you control with 1/1 counters on them have Reach and Trample. I feel like that's just the standard of what we want in a 1/1 counters deck. You want them big, but you want to make sure that damage bleeds through. You're also just giving them Reach, and this can be an awesome second turn play. I love this card in this deck.
Yeah, the only place where this card is ever bad is if you play it and your creatures don't have counters yet. That's why it goes in the counters decks where they already have counters, so they already have trample, so they get through damage, and then it just snowballs and just builds up and builds up. What a great early turn play for this. We also have Chocobo Knights, 3 and white for a 3/3. Whenever you attack with anything, not just this, creatures you control with counters on them gain double strike until end of turn. Surprise, I'm going to hold this in my hand. I'm not running this out on turn 4. I'm holding it in my hand until I have a big trampler, flyer, whatever, and then I go, here you go. They go, uh-oh, and then they're dead.
Yeah, there are so many of these little effects where it's like, if it has counters, X, Y, Z, and the deck plays together so nicely. There's also Summoner Sending, 1 and white for an enchantment. At the beginning of your end step, you can exile target creature card from a graveyard. If you do, create a 1/1 white spirit token with flying, and you put a 1/1 counter on it if the exiled card's mana value is 4 or greater. This is a little bit of graveyard hate, which personally I don't think people run enough of to begin with. And you're creating bodies off of it. You're putting counters on it if you can exile very big things, and it comes down on turn 2. I love that. I feel like you can snipe some really good stuff out.
This might do just enough to warrant a spot in the decks that need another piece of graveyard hate, because it is a little annoying. It does keep kind of doing things. If you have like the land cyclers from Lord of the Rings, the green and white ones that are creatures, you can do like a turn 1 land cycle, turn 2 play this with an immediate target that has mana value 4 or greater.
Yeah, a graveyard. So if you can put anything into your own, you can just snipe your stuff too, because I don't think there is a ton of recursion in here.
Yeah, not really. We also have Yuna's Decision, 3 and a green sorcery, choose 1. You can continue the pilgrimage to sacrifice a creature. If you do, draw a card. Then you may put a creature card and or a land card from your hand onto the battlefield, or you can find another way and return 1 or 2 target permanent cards from your graveyard to your hand. I don't love the second one, but I really like the first one. You get to do a growth spiral, except, hold on, it can be a creature. That's probably the main mode. And look, worst case scenario, if they board wipe you or something and you're out of gas, I'm happy to have it on there. Just treat this mostly like 80%. Continue the pilgrimage.
In green, there are so many disposable creatures, whether it's your mana dork on turn 7 or you create a 1/1 by accident with the other thing. But you're going to be able to sack, whatever little token you have, and then you can put a creature card and a land card from hand onto battlefield. That can be very spicy and cheat out a lot of mana very quickly.
It's pretty sweet. We also have Lord Jiskel Guado, 1 and a white for a 2/1 flyer. At the beginning of each end step, if you put a counter on a creature this turn, investigate. Sort of an interesting wrinkle. Obviously worse than just drawing a card, but it does open up opportunities for artifact synergies and like things entering, things to sacrifice even if you don't want to draw a card with them. A lot of ways to go with Lord Jiskel. Probably not necessarily a card for this deck, but if you want to put it into a new deck or build an entirely separate deck, maybe put him in the 99, you can go to Card Kingdom and buy any of these Precons to get the initial startup for your, taking apart and building other things adventure. Card Kingdom is a great place to buy Magic cards.
Yes, it is. And we are going to move on to budget ads, which you can also find all on Card Kingdom. The first one is Dreamtide Whale. This gets so annoying so quickly. Anytime anyone casts a second spell, you proliferate. That is going to be so strong, whether that be the 1/1 counters on your stuff, the vanishing counter on it so it never goes away.
Yep.
There are shield counters in this deck. There are so many other little counters too that your team is going to be very strong with this in it.
When you start putting counters on multiple things, this gets obnoxious, and it is a must-kill threat that already throws around a bunch of damage by itself.
Felidar Retreat is going to put counters on all of your team, and it's going to give them vigilance too. But if you don't have a team, it'll spot you that too.
Yeah, the vigilance is so nice, and this card, Never Being Dead, is a huge upside to some of the cards that are like this, but they don't do anything if your board is bad. Also, like Wave Goodbye is essentially one-sided board wipe. Reset all their creatures. Maybe not all, maybe that's a little optimistic. Reset 80% of their creatures, and none of yours are affected, and now you get a ton of damage that wasn't available before.
You're going to be swinging in with a lot of damage with Herald of Secret Streams. All of your stuff with 1/1 counters on it is going to be unblockable. That's going to be great for your commander, but also all of the stuff that you have random counters on, like things with Felidar Retreat.
Oh, did you say 1/1 counters? Well, we have to talk about our boy, Threefold Thunderhold. He cares about counters. When he attacks, you get the trigger again. This is, I would almost say this is the modern-day Mirror Battlesphere.
He really is the modern-day Mirror Battlesphere, but there's going to be some non-budget ads in here too. What would a counters deck be without Vorinclex Monstrous Raider? He is an expensive boy, but he's going to be awesome because he's going to give you double counters, and he also is a big body.
He's absolute monster on the battlefield. You have to respect it. It's doubling season on a stick. Bristly Bill, whoa. What an annoying card.
Yeah.
I don't know if people thought about this right away, but we definitely, we've self-corrected. He's like $40 now. But Bristly Bill puts so much work in for no mana. And then if you have a big board state already, you throw down attacks. Your opponents have to respect the ability, and then maybe you just use it anyway, because with Trample, it just goes nuts.
Kodama the West Tree, it's going to give all of your modified stuff Trample, which is one of the biggest hurdles to get over when you have modified stuff to begin with, and you're able to ramp with it too. Wow,
Yeah,
what a slam dunk in here.
If you can get down like 2 modified creatures and then play this, hit with both of them on different players, you just start getting way too much advantage. Even if Kodama dies, you are pulling far ahead. And one card we've experimented with a lot in Commander Cube, he was so good we took it out actually, was Danny Pink. This guy is ridiculous. The first time you put counters on anything you have, you draw a card, it stacks up so well. He has Mentor, so he kind of fuels himself, but that never even comes up. I feel like the player just plays Danny Pink and then draws 6 cards.
It's so nasty. It's going to keep your hand full immediately. There's also the Ozolith, the Shattered Spire. If you want the counters on one thing, but you want to move them around, why not just play the Ozolith?
Yeah, this card has some weird interactions, so be careful, because I think as printed, the card says move the counters, but that's not literally what happens. There's scenarios where you can have counters from the creature going multiple different places. It's confusing, but it is good, and it is good board wipe insurance. But as for cuts, we're going to cut Lulu Stern Guardian. She's kind of expensive to proliferate, and stun counters are not the most exciting thing to proliferate anyway. They're okay, but usually I end up playing cards that are good and just happen to say stun counters on them, and I can't even really think of too many of those. Anyway, stun counters,
Yeah, there's also Summon Ixion. This is an O-ring, and it puts counters and stuff. I don't think it's that great of value. You can't swing immediately with the body that it comes down on this enchantment saga too. And I feel like they're only really good if they have haste, because it's so vulnerable when they come down as an enchantment creature saga. Hi, this is Mia from the future here. Just wanted to say one more note about Titus. With the enchantment creatures like the summons, you can remove saga counters from them to keep getting the same effect over and over. For instance, with Summon Shiva, you can remove counters from it to keep getting modes 1 and 2 to keep tapping creatures an opponent controls. This can keep the enchantment creatures around for way longer than they usually would be able to.
Yeah, we also have Auron, Venerated Guardian. He's not the worst, but he can be dicey since the removal is tied to him attacking, and he also really wants to stay on the field. I think good old Titus can do better.
Yeah, I think this is just its own deck. There's also Exonerable Tide. This is just expensive if you play it turn 5 and you go, okay, well, I have nothing else. I hope I get to proliferate next turn. People are going to want to kill it, and then you're going to be out 5 mana.
Can we just compare this to the Dreamtide Whale?
Yeah, Dreamtide Whale is so much better. It gives you a big body, and it's going to be 2 mana cheaper, too.
Plus, like, you play it and then play something else, and you get to proliferate first, and like playing Inexorable Tide and then playing something else is much more difficult than
Yes.
playing, like maybe if Inexorable Tide spotted me one right away, the comparison would be closer, but Dreamtide Whale is so much better. And then Sin, Unending Cataclysm. I'm pretty sure this guy's important. It's kind of his own thing though. He like removes all counters from your team when he enters, and I think he's a very demanding guy, right? I mean, Final Fantasy players can tell you Sin wants his own deck.
He's going to be a big boy, but he's going to remove all of the progress you made on your entire team, and I feel like that's just its own thing at that point.
Yeah, if you like these decks, please consider buying them on Card Kingdom. Thanks to Wizards for making us ambassadors. I love this set. I am so excited. We have so much more Final Fantasy. If you want to catch more of it, you better watch this video right here because it's got more Final Fantasy.